Welcome to the Wild Ones podcast, episode 33. This is the show where we chat about bike stuff. I'm Jimmy, and this week I'm back with pro bike mechanic Nick and producer Emily.
Hello, hello.
I'm going to jump straight into this one. So last week we talked about GCN being out of touch with their viewers on the cost of things, and we also talked about overpriced cycling clothing. We got a bunch of emails from a lot of you after the episode asking what we thought about GCN's new kit launch. So they've just released a new GCN branded premium kit. It's by a Dutch cycling clothing brand called Agu, and apparently it's an eye-wateringly expensive price. Well, I had a look. Short sleeve jersey and long sleeve thermal jersey is £140, which is $180. The gilet is £165, which is $210. Bib shorts £200, which is $255. Weirdly, there's a couple of items that are a lot cheaper comparatively to those. You've got the bib tights, which are £135 even, which is $170, and a rain jacket, which is £120 or $150. So on the website, they call this Pro Kit, and they say it's their fastest, most technical clothing. They do still offer a core jersey and shorts, which is £60. It looks like a pretty generic model, and they call it unisex. So ultimately, there's no women's version of the core range.
Unisex bib shorts. No.
How's that even possible? I mean, I know you guys come from a cycling clothing manufacturing background, but I come from a clothing buying background, having the bike shop, doing custom kit, because we do custom kit for backyard. And we like to think it's premium as well, and we try to not buy the cheapest stuff, but something that's nice that people are going to enjoy and it's going to look good. But even the prices are just wild. You also then have to start thinking what your demographic is. Most of the guys in our club don't race. They ride for enjoyment. So you don't, bizarrely, generally speaking, the most expensive kit's going to be like a race fit aero, which isn't going to fit the average person. That's, I don't know, you might know more, but it's made for professional cyclists, people that race.
I think, GCN are absolutely massive, and they therefore will have a proportion of their audience which are racery people or do a lot of riding or just want more aero, if you want to call it that, pro, if you want to call it that, kit. So I think it's fine for them to have a really expensive option that technically is aero / pro / whatever you want to call it. But it does feel a little bit like they haven't put anywhere near the amount of effort into a more broader range, or range that's more appropriate for their more broader audience. But how much of it is a deal, and how much influence do they actually have on it? Who knows? I
know Jumbo Visma uses the same manufacturer for their kit.
Yeah.
It looks good.
Visma lease a bike now.
I've looked at, they do bike packing bags as well, which are really nice. It's by all means do that, but just introduce something that's middle of the range as well, then maybe.
Yeah, I think they did two things wrong. Whatever, if you want to offer a really expensive kit, then that's your prerogative, I guess. I think they did two things wrong, because I saw them teasing this kit and it was like, can't wait to see our brand new kit. And I think there probably wasn't enough marketing around, I guess, a soft launch of the fact that it was going to be expensive. So I think that's a thing that took people by surprise. And also, I think if you're going to do that, probably fill out your core range a little bit more as well, so that it's like, yes, there is this and it's expensive, but there's also this, you know what I mean? It's a kind of caveat. And I think that brings people in. I mean, they're not a clothing brand, but these things are going to affect them.
Well, what I think is actually quite interesting about GCN is you really do, the more you start looking at them, the more you realize how much of a juggernaut they are. Their online shop has 250 products.
Yes, so they basically are a clothing brand, aren't they?
Yeah, it's wild, isn't it?
Yeah.
But then at the same time, a good topic on this is, let's say the kit costs even more expensive. Nobody's being forced to buy it.
No.
If people are buying it at that price and they're selling loads, which makes it a viable thing to do, by then all means go ahead on it. It doesn't. There is the flip side; it's too expensive, in my opinion. But if you don't wear GCN clothes, it's not a thing that you can't get somebody else. You know what I mean,
I think the issue with it as a brand, because obviously if you're buying GCN kit, you're buying it because you like the brand, you support the brand. They haven't done enough, in my opinion. I don't think they've done enough to represent what is probably the majority of the people that actually watch their audience. They've put a lot of effort into this really high-end premium kit, but they haven't put very much effort into an entry-level kit or a mid-range kit, if you want to call them that. And I think that's what's probably unfair.
From a female perspective, I mean, I just totally disagree with the idea of unisex shorts. I think when you look at bib pads, they just look so different and they perform so different. And while I don't think that you need gender-specific bikes, I think something like bib shorts do need to be gender-specific. So I would say if you're a woman there, really your option is to buy the expensive kit. However, realistically, probably something like 99.8% of their viewership is male, so maybe it's not a big deal.
I guess the only thing to add is that the core range, it does not appear to be manufactured by Agu. It's just a generic white label product. So, it's not one of Agu's products. So also on the topic of expensive stuff that you don't need, ENVE has just released a new one-piece bar and stem costing more than some complete bikes. This has been doing the rounds in the press this week because it costs an eye-watering £1,300, or if you are in America, a slightly reduced $1,200 presumably because it's made there. The AR bar has more than 20 size options, all with a flared profile, and apparently features the latest in aerodynamic design, something called I can never say this
Nick,
word.
what's it called?
Computational fluid dynamics.
Computational fluid dynamics. So the bars run from 38 to 46 centimeters, which is pretty standard, and the stems run from 90 to 140 centimeters, again pretty standard. They're available from Saddleback, and you can actually special order stem lengths in half-centimeter increments. So that's actually quite interesting. What's your thought on this, Nick?
So firstly, the CFD or computational fluid dynamics it's not a selling point. That's just loads of brands are doing that now to kind of work out what's going to be the most aerodynamic workspace instead of before going to wind tunnel. So they can run thousands of variations and then essentially work out what's going to be best and then just obviously reassert it in a wind tunnel. So a lot of brands.
So it's ultimately a more cost-effective method for aero testing.
1,300 quid is a lot of money. I don't completely understand it in terms of their handlebars usually retail for about £440 and the stems 330, which together is 770. How does it?
Those prices, is that for? Are they? Because I'm guessing they have slightly different handlebars and different stems.
Different bars, but generally this costs the same amount of money.
Oh right, okay.
For the
cool. That's
ones,
interesting. So £770 ish for an individual bar and stem, which is firstly an astronomical amount of money, and then obviously the one piece is £1,300 in this country, which is a big step up again from that.
Yes, so it's easier doing individual handlebars and stems because you don't have to carry as many. You can do your your stem lengths.
Easier for a shop?
For shop and for a brand.
Yeah.
Because obviously the more variations of something
yeah.
you have to make, the more you have to store, the more you have to set up for. I was just shocked that it's going to be that much more. But then saying that, there's people wanting to buy. We've already sold 2 of them.
Have you?
Without people having seen them yet. Yeah. So.
I mean, ENVE are known as a premium bike brand as well. So a lot of, presumably, some of this cost it's just because that's how much they charge for stuff. They're just premium. They just add money on because they can.
And the quality is it's just really nice stuff. I mean, I like it. It's one of those things that it's not a must-have.
It just looks great, doesn't it?
Yeah. So if you can afford it, by all means. Also, there's a lot of handlebars out there that's a lot cheaper, an option. So nobody's being forced to buy this. This is just something they're making that is nice if you want it.
Yeah, like an ENVE bar and stem is the thing that I have always wanted, but I haven't even come close to considering buying it.
Generally speaking, if you crash with the handlebars or any of their products, and you're not doing it regularly, like every few weeks claiming, they will look after you and replace what you've broken. Obviously, there's limitations. This is also only valid to the original purchaser of the product with a proof of purchase. So you can't buy it secondhand or...
But it does make a difference on an expensive product if you have that.
For somebody like me who snaps things all the time, you mean it's a worthwhile investment. So we've got a customer, Dave, who's got a set of Ep.33s, which are eye-wateringly expensive wheels at £3,500, I think.
Wow.
He had the wheels for about 3 weeks, went on a club ride, was taking a photo and not paying attention where he was going, and rode into one of the other lads in the club's wheel in front of him into the rear mech, ripped the spoke and a piece of the carbon out of the front wheel. We rang Zip. You write a whole report on exactly what happened. We're not lying to them. We're telling them exactly what happened, and they replaced the wheel with a new wheel within 2 weeks.
Fair enough. I think good customer service and after-sales customer service is a very undervalued thing for a brand. I think if you take care of your customers in the long run, it's always going to make you more money, even if you have to give up a little bit of product.
I've got to short another story where we had a customer where we're convinced he left the wheel against some kind of heat source because the carbon just melted on the sides. He claims that he was just riding along, but you can clearly see that it wasn't. Zip replied saying, it's not a warranty because they can see that it wasn't a riding incident. They have a clause in there that they only cover stuff where you've been riding the bikes. If your bike was on top of the roof of a car and you drove into a wall, they're not going to pay for that. But in that case, they still said, we'll do a courtesy warranty, and they gave him a new wheel. They didn't have to.
There's always going to be expensive stuff, and there's always going to be a small proportion of people which are willing and capable of spending that money, which is fine. But I think the bit which is the bit that we don't like is the way that some stuff is marketed that suggests that that's what you should have or you have to have. And what we like to do is push back and go, well, it isn't. It represents the biggest minority that you can... Biggest minority? Is that an oxymoron? It represents a very small proportion of people. But that is fine, you know. There's always going to be rich people that are going to be like, oh, a £1,300 bar, cool, that's for me.
That's what I like about ENVE though, because none of their claims were that this is the best handlebar. They're not trying to say it's the most aero or something you need to have save all these watts and stuff. That bar is actually designed to be really comfortable. And then it says 20 variations, but that's just the variations that you can buy directly in the UK at the moment. They do another 25 other sizes, which goes up in half sizes if you want to be really specific about your bike fit that you can get. And
you probably do for that money, to be fair.
45 different variations of the handlebar is what makes it really expensive, because it's not like you can have a 100mm stem and a 38mm bar and then combine them. You have to buy, for every single stem length, you have to then make a handlebar width as well.
So aside from £1,300 aero bars, there's another hot aero trend this year, something that has been dubbed aerodynamics. I think that is a great name. I hate it, but I love it at the same time. So pro riders have been spotted wearing odd-looking road helmets from Poc and Kask, which cover the ears. The pictures I've looked at is kind of like just sort of the top of the ear. It covers the sunglasses arm. They look more like they belong in a time trial, but it's thought that they are the new aero lids which will feature more and more in the pro peloton this year. Have you had a look at them, Nick?
Yes, I've seen them. Looks ridiculous, but I like this.
Well, I think the POC one looks disgusting, but all POC helmets look disgusting. The Kask one looks really neat. I like the Kask one. It's good.
It's not. So, I spoke to one of the head designers of POC about this before. Last year when you and I were in London, actually, and you slept in and I went to the presentation. POC is a bizarre company that came from skiing, and they started doing helmets. And they actually, their first helmet, they did the, cycling road helmet, the Octal. The big thing with them is nobody in the actual office and team was road cyclists. They were all mountain bikers and skiers. And if you look at most helmets follow the whole banana-shaped model in terms of it looks like bananas in a row. POC kind of came out of from the sideline and just kind of redesigned the way helmets are made. Came with new things. And I think this is happening with this as well, where for aerodynamics and at racing, they don't really care what they look like. They just want to make the fastest helmet or the safest helmet in terms of the road bikes. So it doesn't follow like a strict guideline of what has been done for years and years and years, which almost every other helmet brand. And that's what I like about POC, that it's
ugly.
It's not ugly. I love my POC helmet. I think it's different.
They famously do that one that kind of, it almost looks like a little Napoleon hat, doesn't it? It sort of bends out of the sides.
The Tempor, that was specifically made for one person and then tested really well. But then they realized eventually that it only tests well if you can ride in a certain position.
Yeah.
But it's so popular that POC kept on making it. So this helmet, it's not designed for your everyday person. It's just designed for racing and aerodynamics And like with the tempo as well,
You
look
say
like
it's
an
not
idiot.
designed for an everyday person, but these things trickle down so much that I can imagine a select group of people who go for that aero sort of look potentially getting one of these.
It's the Kask one is very likely the helmet that I would have bought 10 years ago because it actually looks quite neat. And it's presumably got some kind of absolutely minuscule aero advantage, which is something that I did care about once upon a time. Now I have no interest.
But this is something that's going to be a thing every year, because every year at one of the Grand Tours, somebody comes up with a ridiculous looking aero helmet. It happened last year as well. I can't remember the brand, but there's always something that comes out crazy because they don't think about what looks the best for this. They just think of what's going to be the fastest.
I wonder what it's like to have glasses underneath, because as a glasses wearer, it's the reason I wear my contacts when we do this podcast, because I also wear earphones over the top. And I feel like if I've got my glasses and then I have something else like a hat or something over the top, my ears and my head start to ache off the pressure of the glasses and then something else over the top. I wonder if that does that.
These come with magnetic visors.
No, if you look at the Kask one though, if you scroll down, he's just got some sun gods on underneath his...
Yeah, it's just, that's a normal helmet. I can't remember what model it is, but that's a normal Kask helmet that's got like a lowered, almost like fender.
And I think
that's
what the point of these is, isn't it? It's not a time trial helmet. It's the first time that a more aerodynamic ear thing has come into the road.
Yeah,
space.
it's the evolution of the road aero helmet for sure. Because I remember Met's brought out the Manta, which was like, I had one of them because I thought it was wicked, and it was basically just like a bowl which goes on the top. There's loads of other variations of it. And this feels like it's the evolution of that. It's got or at least the Kask one I'm looking at here, a tiny bit of ventilation in the front. It's got elongated slightly. It's got these slight ear covery bits on the top. The Poc one looks like a TT helmet, and if you're saying it's got a clip-on visor, then it basically is a TT helmet that we're going to see more people using. But I think we're going to see more of this.
I don't think it lasts though.
Really?
Because
Giro did the Air Attack years ago, which was a similar thing. I actually had one for like triathletes, and everybody used it. And then Casco brought out one that is similar as well, that was used on the velodrome a lot. And the aerodynamics of it is massive. They back then they had a claim where one of those helmets gave you 11 times the benefit instead of Zip 808 at the time would have given you. So for a fraction of the cost, you're getting a lot more speed than what wheels were doing.
I'm willing to bet, and this is a huge amount of speculation, that they ended up retesting all of that stuff and found out it wasn't as good as it was originally
Well,
claimed.
no, because it's like all this testing, it's what metric you're using, when from the front or from the side, and they keep coming up with new things. So it's, yes, but that's why, I'm haven't been quiet about aerodynamics being a bit of a, depends on who you're speaking to, who's riding the bike. It's not something that's just, you can't copy it for everyone, also what speed. But talking about all these helmets is, these kind of semi-TT helmets have been a thing for years. The average person is not buying it to go on a club ride. I know brands like Poc will be bringing out a new aero helmet as well eventually this year.
I think you're wrong. I think people will buy this Kask one because this Kask one looks like a normal helmet, but it's an aero helmet. So people will buy that Kask one because they're going to get 0.1 of a watt saving, but not look like a whopper with like they would if they had the Poc one.
Well, that's debatable.
Next, we have Nick's favourite cleaning brand, Muc Off, which has been in the crossfires this week after a controversial advert they posted online. The advert was for their new silicone cleaning gloves and featured a spoof video of a guy suggestively cleaning his bike. The clip features lots of close-up rubbing, massaging and poking in various crevices on the bike. The caption alongside it said, "Give that grime a beating with both hands."
Gross.
Clearly intended to be a harmless joke, it prompted comments like, "Our bikes are wet and ready," and "Just finger blast it until it sparkles." What the hell is wrong with people, man? However, it also caused a lot of backlash and made many, particularly women, feel uncomfortable. It was branded outdated, non-inclusive, and damaging to the industry. One of the top comments reads, "It's 2024. Surely you could come up with a marketing plan that was more inclusive to anyone other than basic men who like to over-sexualize everything. Yes, it may get the likes and engagement, but is this really the only target audience you want your brand to attract? Because it definitely repulses a lot of other audience who also need to clean their bikes." Another said, Tell us your marketing team is all men without telling us your marketing team is all men. That's a great one. So this week's big question, are people overreacting? What we do know is, until very recently, Muc Off's global head of marketing is a lass called Holly that we know, and she's amazing. And she recently quit and wrote a big article about why she's quitting the bike industry. I think she referenced their maternity policies as part of that.
Yeah, I don't think she was specifically referring to Muc Off, but just
The
the
industry
generally. Time off and flexible hours and childcare and maternity cover and all of that kind of stuff is just not up to date, which is interesting. On the topic of are people overreacting, I was having to think about this last night when I put something together, and I have to say personally, I didn't watch it and get immediately offended.
I didn't get offended,
No.
but I did. I was.
It's gross, isn't it? It's not like...
Yeah, it's just like... Whoa,
I can't say I
what?
laughed. I can't say I found it that funny, but it's just kind of my immediate reaction definitely wasn't outrage. However, I had to think about it, and it's definitely... I can understand the reasons why many people, especially women, would find it uncomfortable rather than just the surface of it's sexual. And I think there's probably also a lot of people, particularly men, that will be confused by this reaction and outrage, because there was plenty of comments that were like, oh, it's just a joke, take a joke, da-da-da. And it's understandable to some degree, because I think the issue that the video raises isn't really something that they will have to deal with in real life. And that is the fact that a lot of women don't feel safe in cycling spaces. And one of the predominant reasons for this is the fear of harassment and unwanted attention, unwanted sexual attention. And I think this advert probably unintentionally sort of plays into that exact fear. So, like, I'm not going to speak for all women. I don't think that anyone should. But I think a lot of us go through day-to-day life very on guard and very hyper aware of threat that's posed by men. And sorry, guys, it's not all of you. We know that. But the problem is we don't know which ones it is. So you have to just be on guard. And that's because many of us do deal with unwanted sexual attention while merely just trying to exist in very non-sexual settings. So riding a bike, jogging, dancing with your mates, walking home alone. And what we learn is very quickly that hyper-masculine and very hyper-sexualized spaces are not generally safe spaces for women, because they tend to be a hotbed for this kind of unwanted interaction. Obviously, cycling is very male-dominated and women are a minority in these spaces, and because of this, you end up being the target of harassment sometimes. I have stories. I know a lot of my female cycling friends have similar stories of harassment. And we're not talking about unwanted attention in terms of someone's just trying to have a chat with you about your day. I mean, so for example, I have a story. I was on my own doing laps of Richmond Park, and a guy cycled up to me and he just kind of gone, hi, and hi, okay, yeah, fine, whatever. And he kept going in front of me, and then he kept dropping back and going, hi, and then coming behind me. And he started to ask me questions. And what I realized quite quickly is he was like, are you on Strava? What's your name? And that was a red flag, because it's like, okay, that's location based. He's trying to find out more about me. He wants to know my name. It just felt very like red flags. And what I realized very quickly, he was demonstrating that no matter what pace I was going at, he could keep up with me. He could go faster than me, and he was not leaving me alone. And I said, do you know what? I'm just trying to train. I'm busy. I'm just going to put my head down and get to it. And he just would not leave me alone. And in that scenario, you're on your own. You don't know what to do. And, you know, while an advert of a man just washing his bike suggestively doesn't really have anything to do with that, making an advert about something that's very non-suggestive and very innocuous and making it sexual basically makes women want to exclude themselves from that space, because it automatically feels unsafe. The sort of responses it creates, you know, like the sort of, oh, get in there and blah, 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 blah. It just feels very unsafe, and you go, I don't want to be part of this, just in case kind of thing. And I think that's probably the reason it's labelled uninclusive.
Yeah.
So what's really fun banter to one group becomes exclusionary or self-exclusionary to another group. I don't know. I guess I can understand why women would feel uncomfortable with that. And I guess that is, if they want to decide that that's not their problem, and if, you either fit in or F off kind of vibes, then that's fine. But it's not a great look for a brand, is it really?
It's just very vulgar.
Yeah.
And that was my thoughts of it. I think 30 years ago, that ad would have come out exactly like that, and it would have been really popular, and everyone would have been like, oh, it's a great ad. Whereas like society has moved on significantly since then.
Yeah.
Like it's lazy, it's weak, it's vulgar. Be more intelligent. That's my thoughts on it.
Obviously, on a side note on this, back in the day, adverts, there wasn't social media. Things didn't come out as quickly. So if you wanted to go on TV or newspaper, you made an advert, it cost money. You then put it in a focus group. So you have people actually commenting it afterwards. And based on that, my mother works in advertising. And I remember as a kid going with her every week to Ogilvy and Mather and sit through. And then they test things. It's not just wildly stick stuff out, because they've massively missed the mark with this one, I think. For me personally, watching the video, the first thing I just thought is, that mist's going to ruin your bike. Sorry, so I missed the whole context of that, but obviously because I'm not a girl, so I don't understand, But I just instantly looked at it and thought to myself, well, like, that's not how you wash a bike, firstly. And secondly, there are loads of gloves out there for washing bikes with, they're like soft kind of microfiber mitts that you use. A lot of companies make them. They work really well. But a rubber glove like that on a bike with Muc Off stuff is just another product they brought out that's going to ruin your bike.
Why is that one bad? Because it's silicone.
All the dirt, because it didn't mountain bikes well, so it'll just drag all the dirt across your paint, which will just scratch it. That's not how you wash a bike.
So we're actually saying it's a lazy product as well as lazy
it's
advertising.
a lazy product. It's one of those things which it's killing me with that marketing teams. They're just not thinking things through on...
You are totally right in what you're saying about the immediacy and the pressure to be on social media, have reels, go viral, do all of this stuff. It takes away that layer of how many channels you'd have to go through. I also think I don't know if they're doing any kind of market research or testing, but if that testing is all internal in your company, then you're also not getting a very unbiased opinion. Like if the head of someone goes to a junior
what do you think of
person, female, whatever, and goes, what do you think of that? What's your answer going to be? Oh, yeah, it's great, because you've got lots of people around you going, yeah, you know what I mean? Whereas I guess if you actually properly focus grouped it, you might get other feedback. But you just don't have time to do that in a world of social media, do you?
Annoys me, because there's companies making excellent product, but they don't have this wild, crazy marketing shock value thing.
Yeah.
And then in the end consumer is just not getting the right stuff. They keep buying it, and it's just obviously I feel really angry about this because it makes my life hard. I've had 2 bikes in this week where I had to wash them 3 or 4 times to try and get the chains clean. It gets to a point now where you're just telling the customer, like, your chains are not going to be clean. Change your oil, or this is how you're getting your bike back.
Something we have always done with Attacus, it's something that our style of work, so me and Emily, we've obviously worked together on various projects over the years. Something we always did with Attacus when we used to own Attacus, and something we do all the time with Cade Media as well, is we define what our brand is, who we were talking to, how we talk about those things, what's important, and everything we do, we refer back to that. And this feels like an example of, we need to make more money. All right, this product will do. Just get some marketing out there.
Yeah.
And no one has gone, well, who's the product for? How is it used? How does this advert actually advertise our brand and our products in the correct way? They've just they've just thrown it out without actually doing any level of like referring back to some kind of branding or style.
I'm sorry, but I mean, I've had loads of debates with a few brands and distributors this week about marketing, and this is a massive problem. Half the people working in this industry in marketing don't come from a marketing background. They just worked in the company. They did a few things. Maybe you're good on social media or something like that. And all of a sudden with that, it's credentials, and you just get promoted internally to do this stuff. And it's a bit of a, it's annoying. People are paying.
I don't see a problem with that. If like, that doesn't mean you haven't got appropriate skill.
No, but then things are getting missed as well. You can't just...
I think sometimes that comes down to lack of diversity of work team. It's into that, tell me your team is all men without telling me your team is all men. I had a quick look on LinkedIn, and I could not find any female marketing people at Muc Off who display themselves on LinkedIn. That might not be true, but from what I could see, there was a lot of guys' names there. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with that. Like, I think you have to accept that the bike industry is very, very, very predominantly men. However, when you have a diverse workforce, sometimes what happens is you pick up stuff that you miss. Like, I'm not expecting you guys to know what you go through as a woman, or we can't know what people who aren't white go through, you know? Like, you don't have that lived experience, and that's also fine, but that's kind of why you need diversity of thought and opinion. I do think there'll be a lot of people who watch this video, and probably who listen to this as well, who do think that their people are overreacting. There's a lot of people who are like anti-woke and all of that kind of thing. And I don't know, it doesn't affect, if you feel it doesn't affect you and you don't understand why people are upset, then fine, if that's how you want to live your life. I don't know.
Which is fine.
Yeah.
And what I say to that is piss off and stop saying, oh, it's the woke police again. Like, people are allowed to be upset and they're allowed to be offended. So let them be, rather than being a...
Yeah, I don't know. As I say, I am a woman. I watched this and I wasn't immediately offended. But the first thing I thought is, I wonder why people are offended. And I don't know, I like to try and think about why that is, and you broaden your knowledge. And if I can make sure my actions make other people less uncomfortable, I would always want to do that. When I showed you this, you made a really good comment, Nick, which was, you are the least woke person ever.
But so, well, that's again, I don't think it's the work side of things isn't what's upsetting me on the thing. I'm just upset that it's going to scratch your bike. I'm just annoyed at, like, I could possibly, if I think about it more, because I would have been one of the people who don't think about it enough. Yeah. And now, but obviously for this topic, because this is the one thing you told me about in advance to think about, is it's more of are you making the advert just of shock value?
Yeah.
Because surely it all comes back again. You are a cleaning company, a bike maintenance company, if you want to call it that. Surely somebody in that company knows that that's a terrible product. And they still made the advert. So did they make the product so they can make the advert? Because in no way did you sit down and design this whole thing, make it and think, this is a good idea. This is how we're going to wash bikes and not destroy them.
But you sent me a message as well that says, because I said to you, look, this is what we're going to talk about. If you don't have any thoughts on it, don't worry, because I've had to think about it and I can lead it if you want. But also, if you want to go against me and me and the woke brigade, then bring it on. I'll have a chat with you, kind of thing. And you wrote back to me, I am the least woke person ever, but also you're surely not a good brand if you're just willing to make people feel uncomfortable. Like, it's just not good marketing.
But yeah, but that's what I mean. You're going for shock value.
Yeah, it is, I guess. Oh, it's just lack of thought. I don't even know if they're meaning to offend. I
do think in some circumstances there are people that are too easily offended by stuff.
Yeah.
But I do then think in that circumstance, if you could, there's different situations. If you can, take yourself out of the situation. And just don't.
I actually think part of the problem is social media, or how social media has now impacted it. You've got the comments that people are able to make are just like outrageous. Like we generally don't look at the comments on YouTube videos because there's a proportion of people which are just offensive for no reason whatsoever. And I mistakenly looked at the comments of one of our podcasts the other day, and one of the first comments was some idiot saying something like, he was basically ranting about how much he hates me and how annoying I am.
But he still watched the video.
I don't understand what kind of person sits on their computer or on their phone and goes like, do you know what? I'm such a miserable person. I'm just going to rant about how horrible this like, people are just, some people are just shit. And I think that is who this Muc Off advert is for. Those people, and they are a minority.
I love it because, I mean, that one video on your channel, not the podcast, but on YouTube, about things that I hate. The amount of comments, I mean, there's 1,500 comments on there, but then also the amount of abuse that I get off people on there. And I just think to myself, you watched the whole video.
Yeah.
But there's a difference. There's having a difference in opinions.
Oh, that's perfectly fine.
Something.
Yeah.
But like the amount of people which think it's okay just to like can you imagine walking up to someone in the street and going like, oh God, you're ugly.
But I can guarantee you none of them would do that in person.
No.
Well, exactly.
Yeah,
that's
like the bravery, of being in your car shouting abuse at other cars, or
You do have to have a thick skin in this job, and there's not many jobs where you get feedback from your audience to such a degree as you do here.
I don't know. Sometimes I'm like, come say it to my face.
So if anyone wants to start a fight with Jimmy in the comments this week, he's going to read them all and you can say it to his face.
Well, no, I think the rule should be write it if you'd be willing to say it to that person's face. And then when you do, if you are ever in that person, I sometimes think I'll write these down with their names, and one day I'll probably see one of these people and be like, oh, right, yeah, you're the person that said too fat to wear aero kit. Oh, right, okay. You can say that again.
For me, I enjoy that. I enjoy that because if people agree with you, that's good. But at the same time, it gives you nothing. When, let's say, disagree. I'm not saying nasty comments, but people disagree on a lot of stuff that I say, like mud guards, and I completely get it. But I like it because it just gives me more stuff to think about. And it gives me a chance to change my mind. Somebody gives me a really good reason, I'm always going to listen to it and think, okay, that makes a lot of sense. So yeah, you got a good point. That's a plus point for the other side. I like it. Debate is a great thing ever.
I always welcome feedback, and comments, differing opinions is perfectly fine. But I'm specifically talking about stuff which is just like unrelated or needless. For example, on the Muc Off thing, some of the comments, or probably a lot of the comments, will actually be people being offended at people being offended. People are allowed to be offended, but being offended about someone being offended is just like, it's a dictatorship.
Right, let's wrap this up.
So, time for another round of overrated or underrated. I'm going to read out a list of things and you are going to tell me if they are overrated or underrated. First up, we have a suggestion from Alex about Girona. So, I found Girona to be overrated. It's nice, but almost everywhere in Spain is nice to ride bikes, but a lot of places are cheaper, less busy, in brackets with influencers, and have great food too. So, is Girona overrated? I've never been there myself. I've been to Barcelona. I've ridden a decent chunk of that coast, and it is all very, very nice. The pictures I've seen from lots of my friends that have been to Girona, it looks pretty basic. It's definitely not somewhere people are going because it looks beautiful. It looks the same as a lot of places in Spain. Apparently, the riding is very good. Historically, lots of pros used to go there because it was quiet, but it had a lot of variety in the style of riding, and I think that's probably why it's become very popular.
I've never been, so I'm not qualified to comment, but this has come up in the bike shop quite a few times. James Jobber, that works for me, races for Conti team. Usually one's based in Asia, so he's really lucky in terms of that kid just rides in the nicest places around the world, like Guadeloupe, in the South Pacific. He rides in the Caribbean every year. He's done, last year it was Poland, France, Bulgaria. He races in Taiwan. He raced in China. He did the tour of Saudi Arabia. So he rides everywhere. And loads of people always ask him in the shop, because he's always where's the nicest place you've ever ridden your bike? And his answer 100% is always Girona. He loves them all. He's not an influencer or anything like that. He just really likes the roads and riding over there.
And it's specifically the riding rather than the...
No, he's not a coffee or any kind of fancy person. Like that kid lives to ride his bike.
Because isn't that the thing about Girona? It's got like little cycling specific cafes and shops and that sort of thing.
Well, there's a couple there. It's not a huge scene. It's obviously grown recently because it's become popular. But
did it become a substitute to Mallorca because Mallorca was very busy?
It became popular because lots of pro teams used to go there.
Right.
And I believe the reason, and this is actually one, I've spoken to James about it as well, I believe the reason it's popular is that you can get a lot of variety in riding in a very small space. So you can do flat rides, you can do mountain rides, you can do gravel ride. You can do lots of different types of training from one base. Whereas, for example, if you go to Tenerife, you're going to get a lot of altitude training.
You're just riding a blooming mountain
but
the whole time.
But that's about it. That's all you're going to get. Whereas you can go to Girona and you can do your easy rides, you can do your hard rides.
Yeah.
When I was in the infantry, we did for the Army Cycling Champs, the infantry sent us all to the Pyrenees for 2 weeks to train on a training camp. And I must say, some of the nicest places that I rode was near Andorra and closer to Barcelona and Girona. So I just assume if that is what the scenery is like over there, it was just really nice to ride your bike. I've always found, once again, I haven't been, so I'm not but just from looking at the climbs and things in Mallorca, everybody loves to go there. I'd like to go and see what it's like. I just don't think the climbs are big enough.
Well, you want to go Tenerife then?
It almost comes down, I mean, people like different things on holiday. Some people don't like to be bothered. Some people want to be around hustle and bustle. But it's one of those things as well, and I always think it with films. If you see that a film is really highly rated, you usually watch it and are disappointed. If you just find something and you know nothing about it and you go and you're like, oh, and you watch it and you're like, oh, that was actually really, really good. Sometimes overhyping can make you like stuff less. If you're going there thinking it's the best place on earth, it probably isn't going to be.
So I think it probably is overrated. However, I don't exactly know. Oh, what I can definitely say is underrated is cycling in Spain. So I've started in Alicante and I made it as far as I can't actually remember what it's called until I got food poisoning. And the whole of that east coast of Spain is just, it isn't amazing to look at, but the roads are good. Cars generally stay away from you. There's climbs, there's not climbs. The coast is beautiful. There's loads of food options. Riding in Spain, I think, is massively underrated.
The context of this is we live in the UK and it's really cheap to get, I don't know, a Ryanair flight over to Spain and go and ride. If you're in the US listening to this, do not think that you need to go to Girona or Spain because it's the greatest place on earth. You know what I mean? So
you'd have such an anticlimax going to Girona from America.
If you live in the US, you're going to fly somewhere to ride a bike. It's 100% Newcastle to gravel because this is where everything happens.
Next up, we have, and this is one for Nick. I'm pretty sure we've covered this previously, or at the very least, Francis and I have had a conversation about it. But I think with Nick being here, being a bike shop owner and a mechanic for a bazillion years, it's a good point of view or a good angle to come from. Direct to consumer brands.
Overrated. I say this from a bike shop's perspective. They want to have their cake and eat it. And I suppose that is fine. But constantly we have issues. I'm going to use Canyon as an example, Wiggle as an example for the online as well. They sell things to people and they aren't able to offer proper after service. So something's broken and the always answer is take it back to your local bike shop. But these brands are actively trying to kill local bike shops, but they still expect us to help them.
They're not actively trying to kill bike shops.
Well, they are because they're trying to cut out the bike shops.
But what they are doing is likely to kill. I guess they have to have an awareness that what they are doing will have an impact on bike shops. I can
guarantee if you ask Canyon, what's your end goal would be to sell everybody their bikes and make sure people only buy from them, which is, you're seeing it on the forums more and more, like bike shops saying they're going to stop selling stuff. They're just going to work as service centers. But then it's, the big thing is that you're buying stuff from there. It is better priced most of the time, but at the same time, it's when you need help or advice or somebody, like, it's just, you still have to go to the bike shops. I know I'm biased. I completely understand that.
Well,
but
yeah,
I just think it's not,
I guess the problem with this is from a consumer's point of view, they think, well, I'm getting a better deal if I buy a bike from someone like Canyon, so that's not my problem.
Yeah.
And if you don't want to service my bike, fine, someone else will.
You're not always getting a better deal, though. That's the one thing I keep trying to tell to people, because in some instances, people go off, back in the day, everybody went off pricing of group sets. There's still a massive thing where somebody says, oh, it's got an Ultegra group set, and you just assume whatever bike's got an Ultegra group set should cost this much. And then that'd be a cheaper bike, and it's, yes, but you can't just go off the group set. What are you getting for the rest of the bike? We've seen with custom builds as well. If you're buying a very expensive bike, you could buy something for cheaper on there, but then you instantly have to change what wheels you want, what tires you want, what handlebar, length, stem. I think Canyon's getting better with that, but it's just more of a, I'm biased. It's killing bike shops, and it's overrated.
I do agree it will be having an impact on some regions, because there's going to be certain shops which are impacted more than others, just because that's how things work. Like Canyon selling however many bikes doesn't have an impact on you.
Not as much.
It might have an impact, but it'll be an insignificant impact. Whereas a bike shop which predominantly sells £1,000 to £3,000 bikes will definitely feel more of an impact than someone like yourself, which sells a lot of high-end custom builds.
We're not the norm. Like, as a bike shop, we've been very fortunate, and we do only custom. We deal in niche. We only do drop bar road and gravel bikes. We don't deal with anything else. We don't stock bikes in either. By not stocking bikes in, we're not pressured to sell a customer something because we're overstocked and stuff. So you don't get the case of I've got 40 bikes in the shop. You come in to buy a bike. And technically, the right bike we don't have, but then as a bike shop, you think, oh, I have to sell one of these bikes because if I don't sell it, I'm going to be stuck with it.
Which is a lot
And
of
you have to
people's
pay,
pet peeve
which is
with
the problem.
bike shops. Yeah.
So then all of a sudden the bike's selling in the wrong bike. So we don't have that. We've got a stock in group sets now because it's easy and I need stock of them, but I'm not pressured to sell you any of that. And then the frame sets we just order in. At the moment, I think we've got 3 frame sets in that's not sold, but they're all ordered in my size. Kind of showing it's kind of, but it's just to show people some stuff. But I'm not pressured to sell them. They're not year-specific models either. But yeah, the online bike shops direct consumer is killing the traditional bike shop.
Yeah.
By trying to undercut them for all these things and then expecting. We get phone calls of people saying, "Oh, I've bought these wheels of Wiggle." They're not true straight away. You've got to Wiggles just said, "I should bring it to you to have it trued," and they'll pay you. And they tell us how much they're paying us, which is another thing that gets me. We've done a Canyon before where they've had those extendable bars. It's come in, the bar was cracked day one. So then Canyon sent the guy to us and then said, "We will pay you this much." I'm like, well, you can't dictate how much you're paying the shop because it was less than what we would have charged to have it fixed. And then that came, fitted, and that one cracked straight away again. So the guy got to say it. And the second time we just said, "No, I'm sorry, just send it back to Canyon." Then the customer says to you that, "Well, it's not convenient, send it back to Canyon." You're like, but you can't, you wanted the convenience of buying it from them. You can't have best of both worlds, the convenience of buying it from the online, but then also wanting convenience of just taking to the local bike shop when you've got a problem. It's a bit of, there needs to be a balance.
You surely can, but you can't assume that it's not going to be expensive to fix. But so like if like you can charge whatever you want, but then the customer can go to any bike shop that they want. So like ultimately, if someone is buying something from a brand like Canyon, they just need to be aware that if stuff goes wrong, they might have to find a solution and pay money to fix it.
Exactly.
What I actually think a lot of people miss is there are a hell of a lot of good independent bike shops. There are also a lot of rubbish bike shops out there. The annoying thing is there isn't an easy way of working out what's what. If you do find a good independent bike shop, then you're going to get as much value from buying a bike from them as you are buying a Canyon. Like I know if I'm buying a bike off you, excluding the fact that you're my mate and you'll do me a good deal. Or a better example is I know you've sold bikes to customers that are not your mates that are unbelievably good value because you understand the bigger process. And they would get the same value on the surface if they were buying one from Canyon, but they don't then get all of the additional aftercare.
We've started doing a new thing in the shop, which has been quite good. It's just to kind of give us an idea of what's happening, but also the customer, where every day I get one of our customers coming in saying, "Oh, this is wrong," or that, or some small problem they've had. They've bent a metal hanger, or they've had a puncture, or Ladine's quite a good example, tubeless top-up. And then most of the time I'll just do it for free. But what I've started doing now is I do stick it through the till still against their name with the charge zeroed out, just to kind of track the discounts. And there's somebody like Chris, who, you know, one of the club members, we worked at, he's had something like £6,000 worth of discount this year already for free. If you add it all up, it's kind of, well, yes, if your initial bike was £200 or £300 more expensive, over a year or so with small things you need doing to your bike, you've won again. Massively. I mean, they've massively won on what, so that's...
The anomaly is the person that buys a bike and has no issues with it.
Yeah.
Which does happen as well.
Yeah.
Which does occasionally happen. So there are people out there that will buy D2C bike brands off the internet. Yeah. They're going to have zero issues and they're going to go, well, why wouldn't I do this? I'm getting better value.
And I understand in some rural areas where you live and there's no bike shop nearby you and you need to get a bike to you. But it's just... in terms of, it's not the end solution. If all the bike shops disappeared, it's going to be a problem for people.
Next up, proper coffee.
Overrated.
So I guess by proper coffee, what we're saying is like a proper coffee machine in a coffee shop with fancy beans, third wave. That's the name for it, isn't it? Third wave coffee. Is that what we're talking about?
I think so, yeah. There is a point where you, Jimmy, he was obsessed.
Nearly bought a coffee shop because I was so obsessed with
He
coffee.
was obsessed with coffee.
I've got a coffee shop and an £11,500 coffee machine with roasters and a £2,000 pour over grinder and all these things. And it's all good. And I'm not going to lie to you. In the morning at home, I have Lidl's coffee, whatever the brand's called. Like, I don't know what they do with their own thing. Instant coffee with a sugar in it. And it tastes beautiful. Yeah. And like even this morning, we had proper coffee from the bike shop and from Tiny downstairs, which makes lovely coffee. It's really good. But I was really sad that I missed on my instant coffee this morning because we ran out. I get it. People love it. Just for me personally, it's nothing like I like an instant coffee.
It is without a doubt overrated, but I do enjoy the experience of a good coffee, preferably with a super fancy almond croissant.
What I discovered is, so I don't drink coffee because, I don't know, I think I'm very sensitive to caffeine and it makes me feel like I'm having a heart attack. But what I discovered is lots of people really, really rely on coffee. And the point where that became apparent was on day 2 of our extended coast-to-coast route. So me and a couple of lasses did this extended coast-to-coast, and it was 100k the first day and something like 170k the next day. And day 2, it was also like 30 degrees outside as well. It was boiling. And we started kind of in the centre, which was in the middle of nowhere, and we were riding in the middle of nowhere.
I think it was Alston, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I hadn't planned any coffee stops along the route because I was like, okay, we know there's nowhere to stop, so just have your food and have your drink on your bike and we'll be fine. And I made enemies that day because I hadn't planned in any caffeine stops, and it just completely didn't pass my mind, but there was some evil looks that I was getting. They were angry.
I'm massively addicted to caffeine.
Yeah.
I mean, I have about 7 coffees a day in the bike shop. I just knock on the window now to Lewis and he just comes around with it. It's really good.
So we used to do quite a lot of bike packing, and I used to buy Pro Plus just to simplify everything. Because I've been bike packing and I've taken a hand grinder and a brewing kit, an AeroPress and things like that. So literally whilst we're bike packing, I could like brew coffees in the morning, but also throughout the day. But then I was just like, Pro Plus makes sense. And then I started buying Pro Plus. You have a couple of Pro Plus, and all of a sudden you just don't think about needing caffeine. Honestly, it's so good.
It's one of the most addictive things in the world. But yeah,
it is definitely what made me realize how addicted to caffeine I was. So I used to think that I really liked coffee, but I actually don't care about coffee. I historically was very addicted to caffeine. Right, last on the list is, I don't know why this is in there, but I feel like it's targeted at me. Suits, formal wear.
I feel like this is something Francis suggested before he went away and it just never got done.
He must have been thinking about it because of the secret reason, or one of the secret reasons of him going away.
Yeah.
With him buying suits and things like that. I think it is massively underrated. I love formal wear. And I don't necessarily mean like... I hate tuxedos and that level of formal wear, but I do like smart wear. You'll have known, I've known you for basically a decade now, and I quite, not so much these days, or not so much whilst I used to wear Attacus clothing to be on brand, but I wear a lot of ties, but like casual ties. And so at the christening that we went to on the weekend, we found out it was smart casual. I told you what I was wearing. You were like, that's not smart casual. That's just smart. I'm like, no, but it's a smart casual tie and a smart casual shirt, not a formal one.
What's your opinion, Nick? The christening we went to was Nick's child's christening. And
yes.
the dress code was smart casual, we were told.
But I don't own any smart clothes anymore.
You were there in a t-shirt and
I used
jacket.
to have a lot of suits and fancy stuff. Hugo Boss and all the different things you could get. And I loved the idea of it. I think I loved the idea of working somewhere where you wear a suit. But then realistically, I work in a bike shop. And I started off with the nice clothes in the bike shop, Levi jeans and things like that. And you just get ruined. So now I own one pair of nice jeans, which I wear for every
nice
smart
jeans
occasion.
isn't formal wear though.
No, well, for me, it is the most formal it's going to get.
Keep sending your suggestions to wildonespodcast@cademedia.co.uk, and we might read yours out in the next show. Next up, it's time for Fluff Up of the Week. So this is going to be very short. We don't have a fluff up of the week. And what I've learned from that is all of our issues historically have come from Francis. And he is the source of all of our challenges and burdens. Because without him being here now for the 4th week, it's nothing goes wrong.
I mean, I feel like last week we were scraping with that one as well. We really had to think hard about
what was it last week?
It was Nick not picking up his wife, but he did pick up his wife. Everything was fine.
It's a good thing he's not coming back.
So now, for more listeners take over, we have a question from Nathan. First of all, he says, love your videos. Thank you very much, Nathan. Can you ask Nick if he's able to install Challenge Strada Bianca Pro tubeless tyres and install Silca sealant at the same time? These tyres are hard enough to install without the non-injectable sealant. Combine the two and watch the grief escalate beyond belief. Nathan.
So, this question, firstly on this, we need to do a correction on the channel. A couple of weeks ago, we talked about Jimmy having Tanwell tyres that he didn't like. They were really slippery. And we said Vittoria Corsas, they were actually Challenge Strada Biancas. These exact tyres in 30mm. We fit to your white bike.
So
Yes,
I have
yeah.
those as well.
Yes. I was actually quite shocked because the first time you bought a set of me, when I just met you guys, I asked if you wanted it fitted. And you guys said no. And I'm not going to lie, I secretly laughed inside thinking like, good luck with this one. I'll see you soon. And you managed to fit it. There's a mega trick to it.
Yeah.
I used to run it as a joke in the bike shop with new employees saying they can have a day off work paid if they can fit the tires faster than me. Start off and then walk away and make a cup of coffee. And they'd be like, what are you doing? I was like, well, I'm giving you a half an hour head start over here. I'd always win still to do it. There's a trick to them that are incredibly hard to fit. If you are going to run Silca sealant, you can do it, but you would have to essentially get it right to the end, pour it in, and then slowly rotate it to have the sealant on the opposite of the side of the tire while you fit it. What I would say on that topic, though, is this is a massive issue with tubeless tires. If your tires are that hard to fit, they're not made to your standard. This is a thing that was an issue back in the day. Tires and wheels, things with different sizes, and some wheel manufacturers made the wheels bigger, some tire manufacturers made the tires smaller or bigger to kind of make it work in tubeless. But since the ERTO standards have been placed, tires should be made to an exacting standard. So you shouldn't really struggle that much to fit your tire. If it is struggling, then you need to look into either changing your tires or your wheels.
So next we have a question from Phil. I've recently signed up for the Austrian Ironman and was wondering what are the best clip-on bars to look at, or should I get a dedicated tri-bike? Also, if either of you had any tips in this field, that would be greatly appreciated. I'm riding a Condor Altec Plus frame with Data Zero 100 compact bars, 38mm. Cheers. Well, this is my old world, so yeah, I've definitely got experience.
But
in this.
I'm the only one that's done an Ironman in here, so
You've done an
Ironman, yeah.
Ironman?
yeah, full Ironman.
Have you?
Yeah.
He ran it in flip-flops.
I forgot my shoes, so I ran in flip-flops.
Do you not know about this?
No. What?
A story for another day.
No, it's a story for now. Why did you do that?
What? I didn't want to. I was in the army at the time. And I got offered a trip to South Africa to go and do Ironman. Short notice. Didn't get much time to train for it. Got there, borrowed a bike. I actually rented a ladies' wetsuit the day before because that's the only thing I could get. And somehow forgot to leave my shoes in the bag that you put in the day before. So I finished bike leg. This is a very short version. Got in, realized I didn't have any shoes to run with. I'm a size 13 shoe. And some kid sitting next to me gave me a set of size 9 flip-flops. And I stuck them on and ran the Ironman.
And you did it. You
in
did a
flip-flops.
marathon.
I finished all the doing it is.
Did you actually
Strong
keep the... Am I right in saying that you grew up in South Africa, and I don't know whether it's a joke that people say about you or not. Did you not wear shoes for a long period
didn't
of
wear
your
shoes
childhood?
in school or anything until about 13, 14.
So would it not have just been easier to not wear shoes?
Yes, barefoot would have been much better for me in hindsight. But at that point, I'd been in England for a while. My feet became soft.
Okay.
And I was more worried about glass and thorns and
Fair
things like that.
enough.
And also just wear and tear on my feet of running a marathon.
But presumably
barefoot.
half of your foot was still hanging off these knives.
Off the back, yes.
Yeah.
So obviously the middle of the flip-flops tore through my toes. After the first lap, I put a pair of socks on that I went over my feet just inside the shoe. But
Was it a full Ironman? You
full
did
Ironman,
a marathon?
full marathon.
Christ.
I got 5 stress fractures on my foot Oh, on both, 3 in one and 2 in the other one, from the way your toes grip onto flip-flops to run.
I remember you telling me about this, and you said something like, if you didn't complete it, you would have got into so much trouble that you just had to get it finished.
Well, you're in the army, like it's called bad admin for getting your shoes. So I thought, I could get bad admin by not doing shoes or complete it and look like I had loads of determination done it, but obviously ruined my feet in anyway.
And then got a medical discharge.
So, I was never going to be a fast runner,
really.
But it took me 7 hours to get around the marathon. I ran the first 2 laps, went fairly well. And then by the 3rd lap, I was just limping around and stumbled across. I was ruined. Anyway.
So should we go back to the question?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
So the difference between getting clip-on bars and a dedicated TT bike is many thousands of pounds. So I would definitely say start with clip-on TT bars and see how you get on with them. I know Redshift do quite an interesting one. I can't even remember how much it's cost, but you can clip it on and off. So even if you just leave the mounts on, you can clip the extensions on whenever you want to train on them. USC, which is also exposure lights, they used to do one, and I had a set many years ago. I'm sure there's tons of companies out there now which are doing clip-on TT bars. Definitely start there, in my opinion, and probably go cheap because you might find you hate them. Or what you might do is learn the type of bar that you might like. For example, when I use clip-ons, a lot of clip-on bars back then used to come with straight bars, which puts my wrists in a horribly uncomfortable position. So I wanted to get, I think they're called praying mantis bars, where it like turns up at the end instead. But I'm sure it's come on a long way from when I was buying them. I wouldn't say get a dedicated TT bike if you're just doing one Ironman, because there's just no point. Get some clip-ons, see how you get on with them.
That's the one and only ever triathlon I've done. I will never do one again. So it would have been a massive waste of money of buying,
Someone once said to me a guy I used to train with, Di Woodsford, is a massive long distance triathlete, has done Norseman and just loads and loads of stuff. One of the first times I ever rode with him, and I was just like, I don't know how you do this, like really long distance stuff. And he said to me, an Ironman is basically an eating competition. It isn't actually about any of the, you can ride the distance, you can run the distance, assuming you've done some training. The important thing is you eat consistently, you eat enough, and if you do, you're going to keep going.
It goes beyond that as well, because obviously I didn't train properly for mine, but all I got told repeatedly, and it did work, was work out what your max heart rate is. Don't go over 75% at all, but also try to not go under 65%. Just sit in that sweet spot. Don't worry about who overtakes you, or if somebody, don't fall into the trap of trying to race anybody. You're racing against yourself. If it's your first one trying out, stick to 70 to 75% of your heart rate for everything, no matter what, and that'll be the most efficient. Every time you go over that 75 or into your lactate threshold, you are going to burn matches that you're going to pay for when you're running. And remember your shoes.
You can also go lower than 65 if you want.
You can, but what I mean is, I'm trying to say if you want to optimize your time, because lower than 65 is not going to benefit you. Well, it's just going to be slower.
I think that's speculation. It's going to be based on many factors. The point is, go easy, but not too easy. Yeah. Definitely don't go hard. Don't burn your matches.
Remember your shoes.
Keep sending us your stories, questions, and fun stuff to wildonespodcast@cademedia.co.uk. Before we go, I just want to say a massive thank you to you all. Thanks for listening. Thank you to those of you that have left a 5-star review. Thanks to those on YouTube that are liking and subscribing. It really makes a massive difference to us. Your continued support is what allows us to keep putting out this show for free. So please keep doing what you are doing. Thank you. We appreciate it. Cheers and goodbye. We love you. On to the next one. Thank you very much. Goodbye, everyone. Peace and love.
Lovely.